The reason that members from Team Skywatcher contacted me and started coming out and working with me is because a lot of times in the government programs, they encounter something on a mission or like a job that they have where they're told, go out and do this. And they're specifically told, don't ask any questions, don't talk about it. You're not allowed to go home and talk about what you just saw or what you were involved in with any of your family or friends. And they're not even allowed to discuss it between each other. There's no speculation, just go do the job, load it up with the helicopter, deal with it and get it out of here. And so they're left with a million questions of their own. Strange things follow them home. And like what happened with Mike Batista was like, he'd have these direct encounters like a UFO and entities. And then the things that he encountered, he was seeing represented on the ancient petroglyphs that he saw in my videos. And so he was like dying to come out to know what I knew. As soon as I start working with them, it's like, I realize I'm like expecting them to be the expert on all this. And the reality is we get out there and up by Skinwalker Ranch or working up at this property called Thunderstrike Ranch, just like 20 miles north. And there's a lot of times where I realize they're all looking at me, asking me what I think. We realize that, oh, all of us have a different piece of the puzzle there.
Welcome, everyone, to Cosmic Convergence, an experiencer-hosted podcast. Join us as we dive into the fascinating realms of extraterrestrial intelligence, consciousness, and more. Today, we're joined with Carl Crusher. He is recognized online as an experiencer and a field investigator in the study of the phenomenon. Carl has cooperated closely with the teams connected to Skinwalker Ranch and Skywatcher team, while documenting psionic contact methods, capturing compelling UFO footage in real time. Carl educates people on secret UFO crash recovery programs. There's ties to psionic spy initiatives and on-the-ground research into portals, paranormal activity, ancient artifacts, and more. And thank you, Carl, for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, that was a great introduction. You covered like all the bullet points of everything I've been up to. So it sounds like we have a lot we could talk about. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. Very excited. We've been watching you for a while and all the content you've been doing and doing with those separate teams. So really wanted to have you on because you're someone that is really interacting in real time with the phenomenon and kind of what is going and what's contacting us in those individual ways. Give people that are maybe unfamiliar with your background just a little bit of how you got into the UFO space or just the phenomenon in general and your own awareness of that in your life.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it started for me when I was a child growing up. When I was like 11 years old, I had what you would consider like a full abduction experience during a sleepover with one of my friends where both of our families and parents were out of town. And so we didn't want to be at home alone by ourselves. And so he invited me to come over to his house. And the whole plan was we were just going to he lived in a split entry level home. And we decided we were going to sleep down in the basement where the living room was because we wanted to wake up and watch Saturday morning cartoons, because back then, cartoons were only on TV and on Saturday morning. We didn't have the internet or anything. In the middle of the night, I woke up and he was like already awake and sitting upright. And it was like he was trying to yell or scream like he was afraid. And there was like a weird energy flowing through the room. And there was basically three entities in the room. There was two short ones and one taller one. And the two entities, one was at each of our feet. And it was like each of them were trying to grab our ankles. And behind them, where the wall and the couch and this hallway normally was, instead of it just being the house, it was like this big, dark vortex that like went in and went down. Like it looked like a big, dark water slide going down into the underworld or something. And so there was the two shorter entities and a taller one behind them that was kind of like floating on the edge of the vortex, like up in the air a little bit. And after that, it was like everything just like went dark. Like as soon as I looked at the taller entity, he was holding something in his hand that I can only describe that was like a magic wand or something like that. And as soon as I looked at that, it's like everything just went flat black. And then next thing I know, it's like I'm coming back to consciousness, and it didn't feel like waking up in the morning from being asleep. It was like passing out and waking up again. And for some reason, both of us were upstairs underneath the kitchen table instead of down in the living room. So we were in a different room of the house. And I looked over at him, and he was also just waking up. He looked over at me, and the first thing he said was, there was three of them, you know? And so I realized it wasn't a dream. Like he saw the same thing that I had seen. And I was like, I know. And we freaked out. We jumped out of our sleeping bags and we ran out the back door, and we like stood at the back of the yard, just staring at the back of the house. And he just started describing what they looked like and the vortex, and then I would fill in parts of the story. And it's like we both remembered everything up to that point where it all went blank, you know? And that was like my first experience. And after that, I really don't know if he had any more experiences, but I went through a couple of years of like classic sleep paralysis after that, where I would wake up in my bed and I would be like, I couldn't move my body, but I could look around the room, and there would be a strange figure in the corner of the room, like the Hat Man or the classic characters, you know,
I've had
like
the same
that.
thing
And
happen to me,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. I'd have my bedroom door, like I'd lay there and watch the doorknob turn and the door open, and then something would enter the room, and then I would have these like these wild like out of body experiences where I would go to these other dimensions and strange things that were, and the whole time it was like I was lucid. I could maintain my thoughts, and I was asking myself questions and wondering what's going on, like a very vivid experience. But anyway, I was raised in the Mormon church, and so I really didn't have any understanding or context of what was going on with me. And so like when I tried to tell my mom anything that happened, like it was kind of, and it wasn't her fault or anything, no discredit to her, like she was doing her best, but it was always kind of like, well, are you doing something wrong in your life where you're attracting negative things into your life, like demons or something like that, you know? And so the way I handled it was I just kind of thought that I was like a bad person, or I was doing something wrong, and there was something wrong with me. And I didn't really have the right understanding or tools to deal with all of it. But my childhood and those early experiences kind of put that experience and all of these burning questions inside of me to try and like wonder what they were. And as I got older, I kind of buried a lot of those experiences. And I, you know, when I got into high school and things, a lot of it stopped happening, and I kind of suppressed it out of my life. And then as I got older, I got married and had kids, and nothing really happened. And then about 15 years ago, I started like puzzling with different questions, and I started having problems with some of the things that I was learning about the church that I belonged to. So I started having what they would call like a faith crisis, and I started digging into the history of the church and the founders of Mormonism, and having all these questions. And right about that same time, my father started struggling with dementia, and then after a couple of years, he passed away. And my dad was a really interesting guy. Like he was very simple. He like retired as like a custodian at the local university, but back in the day when he was in the army, he had like NATO level cosmic clearance, and he was a part of some really interesting things. And he would always pose these different questions to me that involved like UFOs and alien life, and wondering if there was different things out there. And he would just, you know, I would get talking about religion and the church, and he would throw in like this curveball about UFOs or non-human intelligence and all this stuff that I didn't really know how to answer. But one thing that we did have in our relationship was I told him, I was like, hey, when you pass away, if there's any way possible you could come back like as a ghost and like show up to me or give me a clue, or like I was like I would even leave like a bell next to my bed. If you could just ring it or something and let me know there's something there, that would be awesome, you know. And honestly, when he died, it was right when right after I had kind of excommunicated myself from the church and like left Mormonism. And so I had started at the same time exploring other religions and different philosophies. I started looking more into science, and I got into like different forms of Buddhist meditation. Came across the Gateway tapes from the Monroe Institute. So I started going through those and different things. And that's about the same time when my father passed away. And then all these things from my childhood suddenly came up again. Like I had another sleep paralysis incident, and I started waking up in the middle of the night, and it was like I could have sworn like my whole body was vibrating, or I could feel like this pulsing energy coming up through the floor and up through the bed. At one time I even like woke my wife up when I was married back then, and I would wake her up and be like, "Do you feel that? You know, it's like there's like a train tunnel under the house or something. Like, it feels like there's like some energy moving underneath the house." Or I'm laying there in bed and I could just feel it going through my body. And then all this strange paranormal stuff started occurring. Uh, like the ceiling fans would just randomly turn on in our bedroom, and one would spin one direction and the other one would start spinning the other direction, and then they would stop and go the other way. And like uh, when I would walk underneath a, a smoke detector in the house, sometimes it would just randomly start going off. And I would even climb up a ladder and unplug it and take the battery out, and it would keep going for a minute, you know, like weird, energetic, uh, residual stuff like that. And so it really just kind of like came spilling back into my life in my adulthood. And so then I was like, okay, I got to deal with this. Like either something I'm doing with learning this meditation or the gateway protocol, or my father passing away, or there's something going on with this. And
Yeah.
when I would sit with it and try to meditate with all of it to understand it, I would have these experiences that were like flashbacks where suddenly I remembered like that whole abduction experience when I was 11 years old. Like it was like I could revisit it in my mind in a meditation, like holographically, and kind of watch it happen from the corner of the scene and see more detail, and really remember a lot of things that I had sort of like suppressed into my subconscious and tried not to think about. And then I kept remembering a lot of these other experiences. And so it just sort of opened up into my life again. And then the real big step that I took was like I realized like I ended up going through a divorce because I was going through a lot of these changes and left the church and everything. And my wife just wanted to go in one direction, and I was like on this whole spiritual path that she didn't want to go down. So it ended up bringing into our marriage, and then suddenly it was like there was nothing in the way. Like I could my kids were older, my wife had moved on and left, and so now I was like, well, what do I want to do with my life? And so my main goal became to just fully integrate this whole adventure and spiritual journey and all these questions into what I was doing. We were already doing YouTube as a family, and so I already had like a big YouTube channel and everything, and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with that. And so I thought, I'm just going to start exploring this and documenting it and filming it and sharing my whole experience. And maybe there's other people out there that have been through the same thing. And so I would say about 5 to 5.5 years ago, um, it kind of occurred to me that in my local area, living down here in southern Utah, where I live, I'm surrounded by all these ancient Native American sites where, like, the Fremont people, the ancestral Puebloans, the Navajo, the Shoshone, a lot of different tribes lived around here and had different ritualistic practices. And one of those things was to go carve a lot of petroglyphs and pictographs in these ancient canyons and stuff. And so I thought, like, instead of just going out and exercising at the gym, it would be really cool to like start exploring some of these sites and go up and find ancient petroglyphs and see where they were and look at them. And when I started doing that, that's when I really kind of tapped into the reality of this whole mystery and how it connected back thousands of years to other people, and that there definitely was other people that had seen things and experienced things and were exploring it. And as soon as I started going and visiting ancient petroglyph sites, it was like tapping into like a node in the matrix or something. Like you sit in the right spot and you stay there overnight, or you sit there and meditate while you're contemplating the petroglyphs. And it's like, instead of the phenomena just randomly happening to you, suddenly I realized like I can actually go out there and experience this when I want to, and I can kind of have sovereignty over my own consciousness and the experience. And I can align my intentions to go out to some of these places and explore them. And so that's what I started doing. I started going out and sitting at these ancient petroglyph sites and meditating with them. And then, sure enough, it was like I could initiate a direct out of body experience, or receive these profound downloads of information or wisdom, or I would have these incredible experiences that at first were kind of unnerving and kind of scary at first, but then uh, as a result of going to these ancient petroglyph sites, I ended up making friends with a lot of Native American people and talking to them and taking these questions that I had and the experiences that I was going through to them. And like my friend Roger in New Mexico, he lives in the Navajo tribe now, but he's like worked with multiple different shamans. He's a Native American and everything. So I would call him and be like, man, I had this sleep paralysis thing, and this man with a hat was there, and I had this whole experience. And he would just like laugh at me, and he was so lighthearted and so sincere. And he would just start joking about it and be like, oh yeah, that's because of this and this. And like, you're being initiated into this whole journey because you're going and visiting these places. Or he would say, oh, that's where Wovoka used to do the ghost dance rituals. So that's why you had this visionary experience. Or, and he started tying a lot of it together. And he would just openly talk about the star people and ancestral memory and tapping into this kind of deeper fabric of reality that he just understood really well. Like my Native American friends just like understood all this stuff that to me was all paranormal and supernatural and aliens and all this. And like, so that's when it really opened my eyes and helped me overcome my fears and hesitations around it, and also to get more confident with talking about it on camera. And so, you know, as I got into that and started posting my videos, then one thing led to another. And um, you know, a couple of years went by, and pretty soon it's like I'm kind of known for being someone that goes out and does this because I've published so much content about it. And I have a lot of insight and a lot of understanding just from that direct firsthand experience. And the big thing is like, I just became really passionate about like, there were people on the internet that were talking a lot about UFOs. They were talking about Bigfoot or paranormal experiences and all that stuff and sharing stories, but I didn't see a ton of people actively like going to Skinwalker Ranch, going to actual places, trying to catch it on camera, like boots on the ground kind of attitude. So I decided that I wanted to be someone that did it firsthand, you know, that actually went out into the woods or up the ancient canyon and was unafraid to go and do it and see for myself. And when I started doing that, that's when people from Skinwalker Ranch kind of recognized my efforts in the field and realized that my approach to all of it was consistent with the research that they were doing. And then I've been invited up there a couple of times, and then a lot of ex-military guys that have been in the, you know, UFO crash recovery programs or psionic assets from like Team Skywatcher and stuff. They come across my content and it really resonates with them. So they've reached out to me and they fly out and they want to do it with me. And so we end up going out to these places and doing psionics, and we share ideas and film videos together. And it's been a really big adventure. It's been really cool, a huge learning experience to just jump in the deep end.
Right. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Carl, for sharing that background. How is man, that must have been wild jumping in off into that from your background. I understand that experience because of my own deconstruction, at least a part of it. But did you ever run into anything that clashed with kind of how you're being raised Mormon, and then kind of as you're deconstructing and figuring out and remembering at the same time these anomalous experiences that happened to you as a child? Did you ever, like, what was the hardest thing they did really get over of with through that deconstruction?
I would say the experiences that I had that were very indigenous in nature. Like I would have encounters where it was like I would come face to face with some kind of a shaman figure or something out of Native American culture. Like I would perceive it like as this tall entity in robes, and there would be drumming noises. This is all like a visionary experience or like an out of
Right.
body experience that I would have when I'd visit these petroglyph sites. And like I would have an encounter where it was being like trapped in a lucid dream where I'm like caught up into a vision, but I can't pull out of it. I'm like sucked into this experience. And then there's been certain things that have happened in those experiences where while I was going through it, it was a little bit unnerving and terrifying. Like it sounds really bizarre, but I had one experience where this like shaman entity showed up, and it was like there was this big glowing bonfire. It was like I was sitting up by these rocks, and then all of a sudden, my consciousness is basically, it's like I feel like I'm standing down in the lower valley, like I've been teleported to a different spot. And there's like a bonfire there that wasn't there before. And I hear this drumming noise all around me. And this figure comes up behind me and basically puts me in the fire. Like I'm like floating horizontally feet first, and I go into the fire. And then it's like these two entities come up, and it's like they're removing my internal organs. Like they pull out my heart. It's like some kind of Aztec ritual, almost like they pull out my heart and my liver and my kidneys and like all these internal organs, and they like cook them in the fire, and then they put them back inside my body. And then it's like I'm standing up in the middle of the flames, and I turn and I look to the south, and it's like I see all these souls or spirits, like all of my ancestors are standing in the trees, and they're all looking at me. And there's like this telepathic message like, well, what are you going to do now, like with this information? Like now it's your turn. Kind of, that was the impression that I got, from that experience. And that was something that totally flies in the face of my Christian upbringing and Mormonism. Like to have an
Yeah.
experience like that sounds straight up demonic. Like they're pulling
Right.
my internal organs out. Like I said, like I'd call and talk to Roger or one of my other friends, and he'd just laugh at me, and he could just like pull a book off his shelf and be like, oh yeah, that was an initiation experience. That's like a baptism of fire where your intentions are being tested and purified in the spiritual flame. And it's a kind of initiation to purify you and to clarify you and connect you with your ancestors and all
Mhm.
that. And that was like, talking with him helped me overcome that experience and my fears around that and how unnerving that was. And then, also, just when you see a UFO in the sky, or you have an encounter with non-human intelligence in different forms, it just shows up a lot of times counterintuitive to what you would expect. And I've even had experiences where I've, felt like I've been pulled out of my body in the middle of the night, and then I'm basically on some kind of a craft, and you would think that you're going to meet aliens, but then like I've even encountered uh what's basically like a version of myself, like from another dimension, like a doppelganger or something, where there's
Mhm.
like a version of myself but in some higher state of life, like more spiritually attuned and dressed different, but looks exactly like me, and it's like being able to talk to myself almost like a Carl Jungian type experience where I have to face aspects of my own subconscious in this direct manner,
Right.
and meet myself from another dimension, and being pulled back, into experiences, reliving things from my childhood, and kind of being pushed to overcome those and to face different things from my childhood, and deal with that. It's all stuff, that you hear different stories about in church. Like when I was growing up religious, like they have the Bible and the Book of Mormon and Mormonism, and there's all these stories where the main characters in those books often have visions, or they have encounters with angels or unexplainable things. Like Moses goes up the mountain and encounters like the burning bush, and like um these kind of strange paranormal experiences. And so you read about them in the scriptures and stuff, but when things like that actually like directly happen to you, it's often kind of unexpected, or it comes at you in a way that's so personalized for what you need to experience that
Yeah.
it's still very hard to understand. But I would say that most of those experiences now have made it to the point where like I'm just not afraid. That's why like going up to Skinwalker Ranch isn't something that I'm scared of. Like going out at night alone up an ancient canyon to have an experience like this on purpose is just something that I've overcome that fear, because early on when I started having these experiences, like it pushed me to face a lot of my own shadows, like
Right.
things that I would be apprehensive about, or things that I just wasn't dealing with in my life. These kind of experiences sort of forced me to deal with it head on and like directly. And that actually was a healing experience and helped me get stronger and heal from a lot of things in my life and overcome it. And as a result of that, you gain a lot of like understanding and wisdom, like to where now I'm on the end of things in this work to where now it's more about developing my consciousness and developing a relationship with the phenomena. And I feel way more confident in my intentions and my understanding about reality and the universe and how all of this kind of plays out in your life and how it interacts with you. So I'm kind of on this end of it now where I'm like, now I want to like publish books. I want to do workshops on my Patreon and keep posting videos and work with other credible people, and just share these experiences, because there's probably other people out there going through similar things. Or
Yep.
as the UFO disclosure rolls out and more people have to hear the truth about reality and that we're not alone, there has to be people talking about it, and people that
Yep.
aren't afraid and aren't just saying, oh, it's demons, and like
Yep.
bedding fear into people. There has to be a way of understanding it and being able to articulate it and see it as a positive thing in our lives. And so that's kind of on the end of the spectrum that I'm on now. But yeah, I've had a lot of experiences that I would say um, directly conflicted with my beliefs when I was a Mormon and just didn't make
Yeah.
sense, which is a big reason why I'm not a member of the church anymore. And
Right.
I had to sort of evolve and change my perspective of reality and consciousness and my purpose in life to sort of a higher level in order to navigate all of this whole
Mhm.
big mystery.
You get into it in a certain framework, like from your perspective or your background, and then you kind of have these anomalous experiences. You're expecting to be something, and it just completely flips your world on its head.
Yeah.
I know when as we've done this podcast, and we've interviewed people and had our own anomalous experiences separately. Sometimes it hits us upside the head, like, and we have no idea what to do with it. But it's like it because it doesn't just buck your world perception, but it bucks the entire your internal personal world up on its head, and you have to not just as you're exploring the phenomenon, but you have to do that internal work in at the same time. When it comes to the subject, that's where a lot of people can get really unsure about things, because it really does affect everything about you. And yeah, it's important to have those discussions and talk, and for people to share their experiences so others don't feel like they're alone in it, right? I know in my own journey, when I was going through stuff, I felt very alone in different parts of my life, and I really wanted community and wanted to know that there was just somebody else out there that was having these strange experiences, but yeah, so applaud you for continuing to be brave and push forward in that notion, as you're exploring your own internal experience with in relationship with the phenomenon, because I know that can be a lot on its besides everything else going on. So but yeah.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. And like you were saying, and like Daniel was saying, it's nice to hear someone like validate that, especially for me. Like when you're talking about the sleep paralysis stuff, that is my story. Like too, like I
Mhm.
waking up, seeing beings standing in the room, seeing shadow people surrounding the bed, looking at me. Some made me feel more fearful than others, and others just uncomfortable. And I grew up Catholic, so and I'm not anymore. I walked away from the church, and um, it made me have to reevaluate like what I was actually seeing. So if they're not demons, what is that? And I had to ask these questions. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, based on your experience and everything that's coming up, it seems that there is just this awareness level growing with people all around the world in different cultures. And now we have government talking about it now. You have like congressmen and women mentioning interdimensional beings, which, if there are interdimensional beings, that is now validating the stories that we're sharing about seeing beings step in, and portals opening up, and things like that. And it seems like there's something coming or something about to happen, more sightings. And I've had my own sightings, feelings of experiences of being taken. And also, just recently, I shared with Daniel like a sighting we had recently over the house. I live in North Carolina, and there were these things that looked like stars, and we could clearly see airplanes because they had the strobing lights that by law you have to have, and these didn't have that at all. They were just solid lights. And she asked, she was like, if you're real, can you like flash us? And then it just got really bright and like went in again. And I actually managed to capture one of those flashes on camera. But the question is like, what do you think is happening as more people become open and sharing their awareness? Some people, you'll hear things about 2026, 2027, these weird dates and time frames and things. But I feel like disclosure of some kind is coming, whether it's from government or whether it's from the individuals sharing our stories.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, even just like when I really started like rebranding my YouTube channel and posting content about this, like even back then, like nobody was talking about remote viewing
Mhm.
very much, and definitely not in relation to the UFO topic. Like the whole idea of CE5 or psionic
Mhm.
contact, like Team Skywatcher hadn't come out and talked about anything yet. Like I remember one of my friends was doing a podcast. He was interviewing Lou Elizondo like 5 years ago, and I did a super chat on YouTube to ask him the question, like in any of his research, has he personally utilized remote viewing or telepathic abilities in connection with the phenomena or UFOs? And 5 years ago, Lou Elizondo totally dodged the question. He's just like, well, that's a great question, but I don't want to get into it. That's too deep of a
Mhm.
topic at this point. But now you fast forward to now, and he openly talks about it. And, he gets pictures with Hal Puthoff, the founder of the remote viewing
Mhm.
program. And like the whole idea, like a lot of people in this space know Chris Bledsoe and what he does. And Stephen Greer releases the CE5 app and starts talking about how you can go out and invite UFOs to show up if you align your consciousness. And so like it's kind of crazy to see the whole topic open up and the connection between all of these different things. Like it used to be where paranormal stories, or, like ghost adventures and ghost hunters was one topic, and
Mhm.
like Bigfoot and cryptids and skinwalkers was this whole other category in a different
Mhm.
box, and like with Skinwalker Ranch. And then you've got like UFOs and aliens. And the idea was that, UFOs are coming from outer space, like from another solar system or galaxy or something like that, like from Mars or whatever. But now, yeah, like you said, there's this open conversation with high level people coming out of the Pentagon and out of these government programs, and Congress people that are coming out, and they're talking about them being interdimensional, and um, the overlap between the topic, like how it's all connected. And as more stories come out, you hear, like almost every single UFO abduction and encounter case that you hear about and read about always involves telepathy. And so that involves consciousness. And then right along with that comes the hitchhiker phenomena, or like after the encounter, some people see orbs in their house, or the shadow figures, or all of a sudden they're experiencing the sleep paralysis. And so it's all, everybody's kind of realizing it's all tied together. Like the phenomena is all interrelated in a way. And the bottom line is, for me, the reason I think that this is going on is that the more people talk about it, and the more people watch videos and listen to podcasts like this and start to discuss it and think about their own life and their own experiences, then the fundamental substrate underneath all of this is that, like, the evolution and the progress of our own consciousness. That's like, I think is the next step in where we're going. Like there's a lot of people in the world right now that when they're going through their day, they don't experience even like metacognition. They have just their thoughts in their head, and they have a conversation with themselves like, oh, I got to go make coffee, and then I need to go get groceries and do this and that. But there's still a lot of people that aren't paying attention to the fact that, like, where they're looking at their own thoughts, and they're realizing that they're the witness of their thoughts. They are not their thoughts. Or like there's all these underneath layers of consciousness and reality, and to the soul, that are sort of opening up like a flower now.
Mhm.
And as more people explore this, then you've got more people get interested in UFOs. They see people going out and doing psionic contact, where they're like me, claiming to go out and do different meditations and a form of telepathy to kind of project your intentions and your consciousness out into the universe. And then UFOs show up and allow you to film them on camera. And as people start to ask questions about that and explore it, or they go out and do it themselves, then it's like it spreads this level of awareness into consciousness that sort of simultaneously is lifting the veil between us and them. It's making humanity, a growing number of people, become more self-aware of their own potential, and that reality is not just this constant default mode of getting up and going to work and coming home. And there's like a, a deeper mystery to reality. And I think as more of this information comes out, you have these high level people that are in the military or in the government, and pilots, and coming out of the Pentagon and stuff, that have had to deal with this stuff like in secret programs, or for different contractors and things. And they've encountered things directly, like, or they've seen UFOs on the ground and had to interact with the beings, and they've had telepathic contact with them. And then they come out of these programs, or they retire from the military, and they're having just as many questions as us, like what was that all about, like what did I really see and what did I experience. And then the gap in between the secret programs and people like us, like, gets smaller and smaller, and we find each other talking to each other and making friends that way, and realizing we actually have a lot in common. So I think it's a couple of things. So I think the phenomena in general, like UFOs, the NHI, the paranormal encounters, I think that the entire purpose behind all of that is to sort of evoke this out of us. Like
Mhm.
when you see a strange phenomena in the sky, like a UFO, you see something like that, or you have a straight up abduction experience, it really pushes your consciousness to be aware at a much higher level. And you're either going to shut it off and you're going to decide you're not going to deal with it, or you become an explorer of it and you get kind of interested in the mystery and unafraid of it, and you realize there's a lot more to our reality than just the surface level. And so yeah, I think it's kind of just this idea that, as we sit here and you look around the room or you go outside and look up at the sky, it's just acknowledging that we only see like this tiny sliver of the visible spectrum of reality. Like it's like 0.0035% of the whole electromagnetic field. And once you kind of accept that and you realize that like that leaves plenty of room for other forms of life or other intelligences, or this whole religious concept of the spirit world to be an actual reality that exists alongside of us in a parallel dimension, in a higher frequency or lower frequency, or just a different dimension of reality. Kind of like you can have, a dozen different video games all saved on one hard drive.
Mm.
And it's like we're one character playing one video game, and it's becoming aware and evolving into this understanding that like, wow, there's like 50 other video games sharing the same energetic space as me. Even though I'm only playing this one game right now, there's a lot going on around me. There's all these other dimensions and other games on the same hard drive, And so as you start to become an explorer of all of it, it's like you're like a hacker in the Matrix. It's like, if you've ever played a video game and you've found a spot where the coding in the video game is kind of broken, your character could kind of clip through the wall and see underneath the programming and experience anomalous things that you normally can't do within the programming of the game. And exploring psionic contact and all of that is, now we're talking about like portals, going to a place where indigenous people used to do rituals, and it's kind of like clipping through the wall of a video game. You can kind of poke your perception and your consciousness through the veil and experience encounters and things right alongside of us that are there all the time that you are just completely blind to. So I think we're just evolving into this higher understanding of consciousness and awareness, and that opens up your perceptions to where you develop metacognition. You start to separate yourself from the story of your life and the thoughts in your head and everything. And then you start to play with that a little bit and explore it. And the more that you do that, you get better and better at it. You get more confident with it. And then pretty soon you learn that, okay, like I can sit right here in my living room and meditate and go into an altered state of consciousness and literally go out of body or remote view another location, or go witness experiences in the past, or maybe past lives, or other versions of myself in other dimensions, or even just contact non-human intelligence directly. And you realize there's all this other phenomena that's how they live all the time. They're more used to this, or that's how they navigate in their reality. And we're just kind of blind and slow to learn all of this. But I think collectively as a humanity, more and more people are becoming aware of it. And the internet has helped a lot to share those experiences and put it out there and realize that you're not alone. And like we'll be able to meet each other even like right now and just talk about how, oh, you've had sleep paralysis, so have I. This is how I've dealt with it. And we become less and less afraid of it. But I do think that eventually the government's going to release a lot of stuff that they have. It's probably going to be a lot of stuff about Skinwalker Ranch, if I'm going to be honest, like, because I think that Robert Bigelow, he invested like $34 million into Trump getting the presidency the first time that he became president. And so I think that like Donald Trump owes Robert Bigelow a pat on the back for his donations and everything. So I think this first wave of disclosure is going to include a lot of stuff about Skinwalker Ranch and a lot of MUFON files. And then there's going to be some, weird stuff thrown in there as well, like from the military agencies, probably the Navy.
Mhm.
And then people will wrestle with that, and that will push consciousness and awareness even further, where people will have to just kind of wrestle with it. But yeah, I think that's definitely where we're headed.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's interesting that a lot of near death experiences, not all of them, but a lot of them, some of them are being like given like a little drip of like where we're going, or a future vision, if you will, of what's going on, and that this is all normal and this is what it looks like when, a species starts to wake up a bit and to what's really out there. And um, that as we talk about it more, because this is not really new, it's been going on for many, many years, but now we're being so open about it that it's hard to like hide. You can't really hide it. And everybody, we have all these movies coming out now. Um, and I never thought I would see this in my lifetime, but now, we have the Disclosure movie with Steven Spielberg. And depending on how that movie goes, I don't know if it's more fear based or not, but it's just getting people to ask that question. And um, it's just, along with that awareness comes other things, right? Like now we have the Epstein files. People are becoming aware of corruption and they're being more vocal about it. What actions we're going to take, I don't know, because it's just, it's a slow process, but it is interesting to see. So I definitely agree with you. And thanks for sharing that experience and your experiences about that, because it's definitely, even though I've had validation before, it's always great to have more of it. So.
Yeah. Part of that validation that I get too is like, it's one thing to like go up to Skinwalker Ranch and to have the government release files and everything. But like you said, this has been going on forever, like
Mm-hmm.
in different levels. Like if you go over to like Scotland or Ireland, or like my ancestors were from Norway, and you dig into their culture, they were all into like the Fae, and they were
Mm-hmm.
all, they had just different ways of identifying it. And they,
Yep.
they have their own, what we would call mythology or fables and stories about these entities that come out of standing stone circles, and different
Mm-hmm.
rune sites and ancient sacred sites, and the druids, and how they were, they would just build these all over the world. There's pyramids and
Ley lines and
doorways that don't actually go anywhere, but it's cut out like a door in the wall. And we sit here and wonder, like, well, what were they doing? But as soon as you start exploring this topic, you realize, oh, the world's always been like this. And there's been multiple cultures throughout history that they were all about it, and they were all into it. And they understood that like your consciousness was not something that was just like inside your brain, like that your
Yeah.
consciousness was like a frequency that can go anywhere, can quantum entangle with anything, anywhere. And when you start exploring that, yeah, it makes you realize that our world and our reality is far stranger than they make it seem on the surface, and once you get into it, start visiting some of those sites where it's happened for thousands of years, you can kind of take things into your own hand and go uh, make direct contact and see for yourself. I was
yeah.
always one of those people when I was growing up in the Mormon church that was like, it wasn't like I was jealous. But I wasn't satisfied with just reading about these stories in the books. I was one of those people that was like, well, why can't I go climb the mountain and sit up there? And why can't I have an experience exactly like that? Or like, why not? And so when you explore it all throughout different cultures, and then you become aware of the history of like the region around you in your own backyard, and you learn how to respect that in the way that people did for thousands of years before you, it's like you can definitely go out there and have those experiences. You can sit
Mhm.
there and tap into it directly. And then all of a sudden, this whole mystery of the pyramids and the ancient petroglyphs, and what were all these people doing, and the druids, and why did they have all these stories? Like all of a sudden you realize you can see for yourself, and you can have firsthand experiences. And as long as you have the right intentions, and you don't go into it, bringing a lot of fear and hesitation, or
Yeah.
antagonizing it, you can have some really amazing positive experiences that will change your life for the better. That's been my experience as I've gone along, is learning how to overcome my own fear, not be afraid of my own shadows, realizing that I'm the phenomena will respond to you and show up to you with exactly what you need to see and hear. And a lot of that resonates with the intentions that you carry into the situation. So if you're a good person and you're doing it for the right reasons, you're going to have positive experiences. If you go into it with a lot of fear and hesitation and you're afraid of this or that, or you've got a bunch of problems in your life that you haven't really dealt with, like, and healed, and if you haven't learned how to love yourself and be happy, then it's the phenomena is going to kind of test you and see if you're really ready or not.
Yeah.
But if you're ready and you go out there with courage and the right intentions, then you can have some really profound, amazing experiences.
Yeah, I always say that experience is the best teacher, and I even tell like my coworker recently, and he was like, "I've been wanting to talk to someone about this stuff, and just didn't know who to talk to." And like, you come out of nowhere, and now we're like having these conversations. I'm like, yeah, and um, I tell him like, it doesn't matter if I'll share my experiences with you, but being that you haven't had an experience, I understand how it could seem far fetched, but it's just like I've had an out of body experience, and it's like I'm sure you'll agree that once you have something like that, there's just no doubt. It's just as clear as the sky is blue. It's just a fact now. You're like, yeah, I'm not my body, and there's something way more than what we
Yeah.
think, and it really helps to have an experience, but I always tell people to do the research themselves, and like to go out and go to these places. I want to do that so bad. Like I haven't had the opportunity yet to go to some of the more significant places due to financial reasons, but that's something I always wanted to do, or talk to the natives themselves.
Yeah. One thing I will say is that, like, something that I did get, and this isn't just to kind of, I'm not trying to talk negatively about organized religion, but there
Yeah.
is kind of this idea where when you belong to a church, a lot of times I think the members, and what I did for a lot of the time as a Mormon, was basically outsource these experiences to the people who are in charge of the church, or who you see as the prophet or the characters in the scriptures. It's like, oh, they're the ones that were chosen, and so they're like special, and there's just like handpicked
Mm.
individuals that get to have these experiences. And after leaving organized religion and not being satisfied with that, and just being bold enough to be like, well, what about these experiences that I've had? And can I go out and do this on my own? Why not? Why not me? Like, there's no reason that anybody can't go out and do this stuff. And I think that's a really refreshing movement now too, is that it's not anything like when I go out and I work with guys from Team Skywatcher and we do the meditations and we invite, UFOs or phenomena to show up, and then it does, and we catch it on camera. There's nothing special about me. I'm not like a cult leader or a guru. I'm not a prophet or anything like that. The message here is that literally, like, you don't have to just listen to me tell stories about it. You can go out and do it in your own backyard.
Hmm.
Like, you don't have to wait for anybody to give you permission. You can become an explorer of your own consciousness and reality on your own. Like, and as soon as you take that step and start thinking about it and pondering it, you start learning meditation or do the gateway tapes or whatever it is that works for you, that gets you in the right intentions. I mean, even if it's hard, like you said, you don't even technically have to go to some special site. There's not
Hmm.
like a special designated location. Like, the reality under your own feet right now and where you sit in your own home, you can evolve your consciousness and your perceptions, and you can have profound, like you said, out of body experiences and spiritual experiences just sitting on your couch, like in
Hmm.
your house. It's really just about making the decision that you want to explore it and that you're open-minded to it. And as soon as you start doing that, you'll have experiences. The only thing about going to like an ancient sacred site is there's something about, like, when you can kind of get out of the clutter of the city, it's just easier to meditate. Or
Hmm.
when you're up next to ancient petroglyph sites, it just kind of provides a natural a setting to be able to go to where you're already thinking about it. You're already in tune with it, and you don't have like a bunch of cars driving by or people knocking at your door or calling you on the phone or whatever. So, it's just a matter of like whatever helps, so like, and when we go out to try and invite UFOs to show up, we want to get away from an airport. We want to make sure we're not next to a military base, and we want to make sure, okay, is this the time of night when satellites are causing a lot of solar flare in the sky? Is that what we're seeing or whatever? So a lot of it's just about going to a good spot that creates like a clean environment to catch it on camera. But otherwise, it really doesn't matter. Like you can sit right in your own house or just go out in your backyard and start asking these questions and exploring it within your own mind, and it will respond, and it'll show up for you. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've had profound experiences in normal settings, even here, and people who watch our show will know. Like I brought up the dowsing rods. Like I saw somebody on TikTok using dowsing rods to communicate, and I was like, oh, I want to try that. It was like $15 for these dowsing rods on Amazon, so I ordered them. And I'll be honest, when I first got them, nothing happened. I'm like, okay, I'll try again later, and then tried a couple hours later, meditated, and try to focus on like higher intention, good intention, like you said, love, as cheesy as it sounds to some people. And then I started to have a connection, and I yelled for my girlfriend. I was like, come over here, like get this on camera. And she was blown away. And even later on we discovered it was like my grandmother. And I asked, can I call my dad on FaceTime, and did. And it was talking, even in Spanish, he was talking, and they were answering his questions. And it's just like, that's just in my house. I didn't go anywhere crazy or,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. You were talking, Daniel, a little bit before we started the show. Like, one of the things about like going out into nature, or even when you just start taking the steps to explore this, one of the, it might not show up initially like a full blown out of body experience. It might not right off the bat, like you're not going to go out in your backyard and see the mothership, you know what I mean? Or get abducted or whatever.
That'd be nice, but
it would be cool, right? But like, honestly, a lot of it is you realize, you start to notice the synchronicities around you.
Yeah.
Like you'll go outside and like every day for a week, you see owls in the tree, or like
Yeah.
for me, a lot of times it's like ravens or hummingbirds. Sometimes it's like these little red lizards. Like I've gone up on the hillside where like I was asked like, hey, we've got this weird paranormal stuff happening up in this canyon. Can you come check it out? And so I'm like, sure. And I've gone to the base of this canyon up by Skinwalker Ranch, and it sounds funny, but like I was sitting there and I just meditated, and I'm like connecting with the environment. I'm trying to tap into the ancient history of the place. I'm not even trying to put out a question like I need anything or want anything or can you show me where anything is. But I opened my eyes, and like right in front of my face on this rock, there's this like red lizard sitting there just looking at me, and it's like bobbing its head up and down. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's like I had this telepathic communication with this little lizard that basically told me like, follow me, I'll show you where to go. And so it took off running off the top of this boulder, started running up the rocks. And so I followed up the hill maybe 20 yards or so, and then it would disappear. And so I would sit and meditate again, open my eyes, and then there's the little red lizard like waiting for me. And then he'd start running again. And that little lizard took me up the hillside and up this canyon and showed me exactly where this whole panel of ancient petroglyphs were that literally nobody had ever seen before. And like I went up there, I was like the first one to see them probably in 1,000 years or something. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like,
that's amazing.
but it was all just like a spirit animal experience.
Yeah.
It sounds funny, but I mean, it was literally like I've had ravens show me where to go and where to sit, and hummingbirds
have like a direct connection, I believe. And I think as we develop our awareness, it's going to be easier to communicate with creatures and things. And just briefly, there was an interview with this guy who was like the president of the Republic of Russia or whatever, coming out for the first time about his UFO experience. And one of the things the beings he asked the beings, like, why haven't you come out yet? Like why haven't you told us that you're real and stuff? And the being had replied to him that you guys at the time, because this was in the 80s, he's like, you guys aren't ready yet. And he asked, do you communicate with ants? And he's like, no, yeah, we don't really communicate with ants. Yeah. And here you are telling me the story about the lizard, and it's not weird to me, at least to me. Like that makes sense. Like we have to learn that everything is conscious. Everything has
Yeah.
a direct connection.
So exploring the different locations, having this personal journey as you've been evolving in your own journey. So interacting with ex-military people or military people involved with these programs or others, what are some of the things that, at least that you can share? Has been there any experiences where there's been a lot of crossover, or something that really kind of surprised you about what they were telling about their own experiences, whether it's relative to the legacy or whatever their personal experiences were outside of it, as like the hitchhiker effect?
Yeah, the biggest surprise to me is that I think a lot of people have this misconception that like, oh, because he, has been to Washington D.C. or he came out of the Pentagon or he's a Green Beret from the UFO crash recovery program, that somehow that gives him some kind of inside access or information. And like the truth is really quite the opposite in a lot of situations. Like, for example, I work a lot with a guy named Dr. Jim Segala. He used to be one of the lead physicists and engineers that was working in the early years at Skinwalker Ranch with right after Brandon Fugel bought the property. He's a colleague of Dr. Hal Puthoff. And, back in the Stanford Research Institute days, they were studying the scientific evidence behind remote viewing and psi phenomena and things. And so they were struggling with these questions like, how do we measure the proof of this? How do we actually collect the data that remote viewing is real? So they had to develop this entire protocol, how to test that, how to measure it, how to debunk it within themselves at Stanford and everything. And as a part of that, some of the experiments that they would do was they would measure brain waves and environmental energetic signatures. So they would have like a gamma radiation a machine that would measure gamma radiation levels and fluctuations. They would have another machine that would measure the electromagnetic field, and one for infrasound. And they were just trying to see if any of these devices would catch anomalies while the remote viewers were operating or having experiences and things. And Dr. Jim Segala, one of the things that he did was he developed a system where he could take all these machines, like a magnetometer, a gamma wave sensor, an infrasound sensor, and he combined them all into basically this little box that's just like maybe 3 times the depth of your cell phone, but about the same size of a cell phone. And that little box has like 17 different sensors packed inside of it. And you can like plug it into your computer and hook it up to your Wi-Fi. And that way, like if I have a sleep paralysis incident, like when I go to sleep tonight, I can actually get up and log onto the website and look at all that data, and I can validate for myself whether or not it was just a dream or something really strange actually came into my house last night and fluctuated all of those sensors, and that shows up in the data. And one of the things that I realized, like talking to him and a lot of these military guys, is like, I've even asked him like he's not so much of an experiencer himself, but in order for him to collect the data, he has to know and work with people like me, just like a normal guy that's having these experiences. So like when he gets invited to go with Brandon Fugel and Hal Puthoff and these guys, and they're going back to talk to members of Congress in Washington, what are they actually telling them? They're talking about my experiences, like, and the data from my sensor and from like a dozen other people like me that are normal people in the community actually going through it. And so a lot of these people from the government are getting their information from civilians, really. And it's not like they're landing on the White House lawn. They're happening to normal everyday people. And so I realized, like, wow, it's not like when the government comes out and discloses this stuff, the chain of information where they got this from is from a bunch of like farmers and ranchers and just normal people that had these encounters, and then they were able to verify it and collect the data. And the same thing kind of happened. Like Mike Batista was like, he, without going into a bunch of, stuff I'm not supposed to talk about, like he would have these direct encounters like with the like a UFO and entities, and then the things that he encountered, he was seeing represented on the ancient petroglyphs that he saw in my videos. And so he was like dying to come out to know what I knew. And so as soon as I start working with them, it's like I realize I'm like expecting them to be the expert on all this. And the reality is, we get out there and up by Skinwalker Ranch or working up at this property called Thunderstrike Ranch, just like 20 miles north. And there's a lot of times where I realize they're all looking at me, asking me what I think, and they're wanting to know what I know about the petroglyphs and what do I know about the Native American history. And then it kind of, we realize that, oh, all of us have a different piece of the puzzle there. So like I'll get feeling my intuition, or I'll see like a raven land on the rock and I get this weird inspiration. And then I'll turn to Mike Batista and be like, hey man, I feel like something's going to happen tonight, or we're going to see something in the sky. Like I feel like I'm supposed to ask you like what time you think they're going to show up. And without hesitation, Mike will be like 3:20 in the morning, and he'll just trust his instincts and his training and his experience. And then it's like when 3:20 in the morning rolls around, sure enough, something shows up in the sky. Like there'll be nothing for 3 or 4 hours, and then like right at 3:20, we're like, what is that? And then all of a sudden we get all our night vision out and it's like go time. And so we realize that we all like have our own different experiences that we bring to the table and our own experiences. And then as we work together, we have shared experiences. Like there's like a time last October, like literally right on Halloween, we were all up at this property, Thunderstrike Ranch, and I'm working there with Mike and a guy called J2, another anonymous member from Team Skywatcher, and a couple of other people, plus the owner of the ranch was there. And like same kind of thing. Like Mike had this feeling and this intuition, so he grabbed like the camera operator and was like, something's happening. Let's get a camera set up and pointed. And this is in the middle of the day. So the two of them go outside and set up this advanced camera that can like see through the infrared spectrum and filter out all the light and all this stuff. And they just like point it straight up in the sky. Meanwhile, like I'm in the command center, which is basically like a big camper trailer that we have set up. And I was like actually getting a tattoo done by someone that was there that brought a tattoo gun. So I'm like getting a tattoo. And the other psionic asset, he's like with his girlfriend at the time, and they were like out on a hike walking across the ranch, and the ranch owner's like in the house. So we're all in kind of different locations. And then at the exact same time, like granted, I'm getting a tattoo, like I've got a lot of tattoos and needles don't bother me or anything, but I'm in the middle of getting this tattoo and all of a sudden I get total tunnel vision. I go completely deaf in my right ear and then totally deaf in my left ear. And then it's like I go blind, and I literally said out loud, I'm blind and deaf. Like I can't see or hear anything. Like I think I'm passing out. And at first I was thinking, it's just the tattoo, but this is where it's interesting. I had just gone up on the hillside and done like a Native American tobacco offering and a meditation. And the one part of that like ritual that I don't do is like add bodily fluid to the ritual. That's part of the ritual I always leave out. And so I wonder if like as soon as I started getting the tattoo, it's like drawing blood out in this way, and it's like a completion of the loop. So all of a sudden I go blind and deaf, and I was like sitting on a stool getting the tattoo, and next thing I know, it's like I just see this purple light, like a magenta colored light go boo, and it like forms in front of my field of vision. And then it was like I was falling through this tunnel, like literally like I was falling down this magenta colored tunnel, like into the underworld. It felt like for eternity. I literally thought to myself, did I just die? Like, am I falling down to hell, or like, where am I going? Like, I had all these thoughts and I was looking around in my awareness. And then all of a sudden, it's like I was on board a craft. And it was like I was standing in this room and there's a hallway ahead of me, these curved walls. There's all this flowing like plasma energy around me, like this glowing energy, like I'm inside some kind of a big Tesla thing. And there's these little gray alien looking entities that are like 3 feet tall. And there's several of them coming up and they're like pulling on my shirt, like trying to get me to follow them. And this is all like a just straight up out of body experience while I'm like unconscious. And in the middle of that, this a mantis like entity, like you mentioned, having this vision of like a mantis entity. I look above these little gray aliens and there's like this tall mantis like thing that walks towards me up the hallway, and it's like telepathically putting this thought in my head, like it's treating me like I'm its child, like it's trying to comfort me, like don't worry, like it's like this very motherly type presence like coming up to me. And I mean, I can go into all the detail if you want, but like long story short, I mean, this mantis entity basically came up and put a finger right to my forehead, and as soon as it did that, it's like I'm back in the trailer and I'm on a couch like across the room, and I don't remember getting up and walking over there. The lady that was giving me the tattoo, she like had a bag of ice like behind my neck. She'd like unbuttoned my shirt and she was like trying to wake me up. And at the exact same time, Mike and this other guy are filming a craft like in broad daylight above the trailer, straight overhead. Like they filmed this object that we've nicknamed the barbell, but it's like two orbs with a tether in the middle connecting them. It's like these two balls of light are up there just rotating in the sky right above us. At the exact same time, J2, this other psionic asset, he's out on his hike with his girlfriend. They have no idea what we're doing. He all of a sudden gets this overwhelming impression where he gets so dizzy. He's like, there's something happening. Something's going on. He got so dizzy that he like actually had to just sit down on the ground. And he was like, it felt like the world was spinning. So he like had to sit down and he was getting all dizzy. And then all of a sudden the owner of the ranch like shows up. He's like, hey, what's going on? And he didn't say anything at the time, but later that night he was like, I was in the house and it was like, he was like, the way he said it was like in my imagination, it was like I saw this giant praying mantis like come right up into my face. I was like, no way, dude. And so it was like all of us, like they were filming the craft on camera. I was having this whole out of body vision, like I was being abducted. J2 like got totally dizzy and had to sit down. They filmed it, and the ranch owner saw the same thing that I did, essentially, like in his own mind, like while he's in the house in the kitchen. And so it's like we're all in different places, but our experience overlaps in this strange way. And so like as a team, for all of us, that's really validating. And you know, if it was just me like passing out and waking up and claiming I saw all this stuff, like they could just say, oh, well, you were just getting a tattoo, so you fainted, you know, fair enough. But like literally everybody simultaneously on the team had kind of a shared experience that was validating in that way. And so it's been really cool working with them, because that idea that like, oh, because they're military and they come out of these programs, that like, what am I going to do and what role am I going to play? It's like, there's a lot of times where I'm just like right in the middle of it and I'm having an experience, and it just makes you feel more comfortable talking about it openly and telling people around you what your impressions are. And it really brings you closer together as friends, you know, like when you have those kinds of cool experiences like that. So
for sure.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. You would think that they would be like, well, we're the expert. We have all the experience. So we're going to teach you what to say and we're going to do it my way. And it's just, that has not been my experience at all. They oftentimes are looking at me like, well, what do you think we should do? Or what, you know, and I'm the one making a lot of the decisions. And because this is where I've worked the most or whatever. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, it's been really cool and really validating to work with those guys.
Cool. That's really, thank you for sharing that. It's really affirming. That's cool to hear. Knowing that we're all, as experiencers, kind of trying to figure out what's going on together. What I did, okay, in your vision when you're having it, specifically, how many grays were coming up to you?
It was, my impression was like it was like 4 or 5 of them.
Okay.
There was definitely 3 of them that came up that were like trying to pull all my clothes, and then there was a couple of them behind, like a little cluster of them. And then there was, yeah, just like this hallway that went ahead of me, and then there was 3 doorways off to the right that went into these separate rooms, and it was all very like organic, like everything was curved, like rounded off oval doorways. Like
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So here's what was interesting. Like Mike actually came back in the trailer because the tattoo artist, they were like dating at the time. And so she went out and got Mike. Like when I kind of woke up, I was like, go get Mike. And so Mike came in the trailer, and when she went to get him, I like passed out again. And so I was like back on the craft again. So it was like every time I would lose consciousness and awareness, it was like my arms would seize up, my hands would curl up like this against my chest in these weird ways. And then that's what they were telling me afterwards. I wasn't aware of any of this, but like my legs would lock out straight and my fingers would curl up funny. And then it was like I was back on the ship. And then when Mike came in the trailer, I like regained consciousness again. And he's like, what happened? What's going on? And I started trying to tell him, I'm like, dude, it was like I was abducted on the craft. And then every time I started describing it, I would start visualizing it in my mind. So I would start trying to remember it. And so I was like, oh, there was like these small entities. And as soon as I would start visualizing it, I would pass out again. And also I would be back, and the vision would continue. So it was like, I was like back on the craft again. And then it was like this mantis entity was behind me, and it was like had a hand on my shoulder, and it was like walking me down the hall. And I remember looking into the first doorway as we were walking past, and there was like 3 beings in there. And one of them was like wearing a cloak. One of them's wearing like normal human clothes. And, and they were all like in the shadows in there, and they were like talking to each other. They didn't even like look up at me or anything. And then I didn't see what was in the third room, because this being like took me into the second room and like walked me into the second room. And there was like a doppelganger version of myself there. So there was like a robed figure that looked exactly like me, but where the pupils of the eyes were like glowing, like with light coming out of his eyes or something like that. And it's not, I didn't say anything to him like to this, but he looked like a clone of me, dressed in like this black robe with like silver lining and thread on it. And it was just like we were supposed to meet each other. I was supposed to just see myself in the future or something. I don't know. And like as soon as I looked at him, it was like I'd be back in the trailer again. And this happened like 3 times. Like I was taken back and forth. And I ended up having to tell Mike, like, I'm going to have to wait, and I'll tell you about what I saw later. Cause it's like every time I try to tell you, it's like it pulls my consciousness back up there. And I was like, I've had enough. I'm done, man. I've had enough. That's enough for now. So I had to like go out and pet the horse and like play with the goats outside and like get back on earth a little bit and wake up. Right. And then like later on, I was able to kind of talk about what happened, and like I've kind of filmed it and told the whole story on camera and stuff. And
interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask the specifics because one of my I had a CE4 event where I was pulled into a craft astrally while I was meditating, and it was when I got on board, there was specifically 4 grays that looked at me and then brought me over to the table, which I was like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be here. You know, that feeling of like, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about this appointment. Silly me. And then I do not remember anything after that. But that was like the initiation for all of my synchronicities with owls and everything else that really led me down this path. And I wanted to mention the detail that you said specifically of the mantis finger to your like third eye.
Yeah.
We had a guest on our show, episode 20, was with Anthony, great experiencer. But he had mantis encounters where he woke up from a out of body. He was flying through the universe, and then he was like, "Oh no, I got to get back because my daughter's there. I can't leave her." And then he got flung back into his body, wakes up, and he looks at the iPad that he fell asleep in its black screen. He sees this giant mantis being. It has like a triangle, upside down triangle like style
on the
chest. And then it's like so tall that it's like hunching over because its head's hitting like the ceiling.
Yeah, well, I saw it was like 8 feet tall, and it was leaning forward.
Yep.
And when it reached out its arm, it was like this long thing that came out, and it had like three fingers, and the one finger pointed out. And when it touched my forehead, it wasn't like it touched my forehead. It's like I felt its finger go all the way into my brain. And then it was like I heard an audible explosion, like a boom, like in my head. And all of a sudden I'm like back in the trailer, and she's like slapping my face, trying to wake me up. And I was like, what the hell? Yeah.
Have you ever
so he had so he sees the mantis, he looks at him, goes, "Oh my God, you're here." He wasn't scared. He was like, like, we have so much to talk about. That was his reaction. And then it clicked a few times, like clicked a few times, and then reached his long finger and then poked in his head. He said, like the same
into his head like that. Yeah.
And then he was just boom, he was out, and then woke back up, and then he started having all these experiences. So I wanted to mention that detail because yes, I've heard that before.
I just posted a video that's kind of from an old interview of Colonel John Blitch, who's a Green Beret, like a nuclear commander and a cognitive psychologist. And he grew up in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and I was born and raised in Rexburg, only like 30 minutes away from him. And we're friends on the internet now, but that's one of his big abduction experiences, is very similar to that too, having a mantid like being show up and communicate like a message. It was
to visceral for him too.
Very intense. Yeah. Yeah.
But it kind of matched. I remember listening to him talk about that, but it was funny because there was a part of me that was like, you're kind of an eccentric fellow too. So he would have to kind of come in a little bit intense for you. That makes sense, you know, where he's like, you're so silly. You know, he's like, I could just rip you apart, but we're not going to do that, you know. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's really cool. And the whole message was like we could wipe you out whenever we wanted to. Like we could just tear you apart right now if I want to. But the message to him was that your consciousness is something that's yours. That's who you are for forever. And we can't touch that. All we can do is like try to communicate with you.
Anthony said the same thing.
Yeah, I said the same thing too. Yeah.
And it's also really validating. I don't know if they're exactly the same things, but I'll tell you, a lot of the petroglyphs that don't look like humans in the carvings look insectoid. And around here, the Hopi, the Navajo, and the Zuni flat out call them the ant people. Yep. And they have legends, like the Hopi and the Zuni have stories where they say there's, you know, different phases of the world where the world has gone through like different massive natural disasters in the past. Like one wiped out the dinosaurs, and then there was like,
so we're entering the fifth world.
The fifth world. Exactly. Yeah. So they went through this experience of a great flood where there was all these monsoon floods, and it could be like the flood of Noah or whatever, if you believe in that story.
It's funny because the flood myth is actually in all these cultures, some of which didn't even have connections to each other.
Old memory of a big event that happened.
The Hopi and the Zuni, they talk about how before this flood was supposed to happen, their shaman started like receiving this in like visions and things like that. And they swear that the ant people came out from the underworld, like out of portals in these ancient canyons and out of the Grand Canyon specifically. Like they came out from the Grand Canyon and took the Hopi and the Zuni into the underworld and that's where they lived with them for several years while these disasters happened. And then after the earth was healed and all of it was kind of restored, they were learning and sharing culture back and forth, and then they were basically taken back up to the surface. And that's when they built like Chaco Canyon and a lot of the ancient sacred sites over there in the like the Four Corners region. And then at one point the ant people was like, okay, it's time for us to leave, and they like went back into the Grand Canyon and disappeared again. And so it makes you wonder if there's something similar to if the ant people or the mantids, or
Yep.
there's some kind of like insectoid looking
Yeah.
beings that exist alongside of us like that, and they're aware of us at a very high level of consciousness, and certain
for sure.
people they pick to show up to and initiate into
I
that.
have a friend who's her father told her one time that he was like camping and he saw an ant being, and she didn't believe him for years. And then one day we were just getting into this conversation about beings, and I had mentioned this to her and talking about the different stories, especially like the one you were just mentioning too. And she's like, I think I believe my father now. Like, cause that's just
Yeah,
super weird. Like for years, I just thought he made it up, and,
yeah,
but he never said it to me like it was a joke. He was frightened in his experience. The being didn't do anything to harm him, but like when you see something like that for the first time and you're just like, whoa, because it
you
breaks
have
your
no
reality.
context. Yeah,
Yeah. You're like, what the hell is going on? And it freaked him
it
out.
makes you wonder too if like are the gray classic gray aliens, are they just sort of like workers or helpers, because
Hmm.
they're almost like halfway ant people, halfway like a human.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like
Like a
they're
hive
a
consciousness.
go
Yeah.
between. Like if an ant person or a mantid was going to build or like clone like an android, and they're going to mix their DNA with our DNA, maybe they come out like a gray. I don't know. I have
Hmm.
no
Yeah.
idea what the answer, if grays are their own thing, but you hear a lot of stories like the gray aliens are almost more like drones, or like
Yeah. You hear that
just
a
like
lot.
little workers for these higher level beings, and they
Yeah.
kind of act as a go between. Like they're the ones that come and take you out of bed at night, and then you go meet the main character
Yeah.
on the craft or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah. It's in my vision when I was talking with my other MUFON member, I was it's like it's like when when the mantis show up, it's like the admins enter the chat almost feeling. You're
Definitely.
like, oh, yeah. So are they going around the universe seeding life, and they're mixing and matching, and then there's all these different species? It's be really interesting to eventually get a clearer picture of how they operate and have had influence with us, because I'm sure that is, again, with ancient man, ancient history, we are just scratching the surface of understanding the different levels that are operating on Earth and with us, side by side. Yeah. Do you have a sense, Carl, of where this is moving towards? And I say that in the standpoint of, we understand the corruption that's going on in the government. We understand the corruption, a part of the people that are blocking this information from getting out on a governmental level, right? Some people call them the Collins elite. Other people have other names for them. But do you think that this is? Do you think that there is something coming there that they are trying to get ahead of?
That's a good question. I've heard different things, and honestly, like I said, I'm not like a guru. I'm not
No,
someone that
no.
tries to make future predictions, but I definitely try to keep my finger on the pulse of what other people are talking about that might know. And like I know Lou Elizondo on podcasts before that have been now deleted off the internet. He's talked about like hypothetically even this year or next year, that there could be something big that happens. John Ramirez, he came
Hmm.
out of the CIA, and he's
I did
heard
a
some
video.
different dates as well that are the same as like Lou Elizondo. And I think honestly what happened was that I think that they brought some professional remote viewers like together to try and do future predictions, and they all kind of came back with the same story, but
Mm,
they can't validate it, but they had like a high level of conviction about something happened. You
right.
know, Chris Bledsoe had a lot of predictions about this last Easter, and I I honestly can't say that I've noticed like any big shift or revelation or new age open up on Easter. We didn't see any UFOs show up above Iran like he said might happen, but that hasn't really given any other specific timelines other than that Easter would be when it would begin, whatever that means, you know.
Right.
Um, you know, as far as like specific dates or anything, I have no idea. But as part of to answer your question, like what sense do I have? The way that I feel about that is like personally, I know what my goals are or what my
Mm,
intentions are, and like you were talking about your experience, like where you saw and had this impression from this mantis like being where it was asking you like, you know, are you really ready? Like if you're invited in, are you prepared to do your job afterwards? Or like, are you really gonna follow through with what we show you? That kind of an attitude. And while I definitely don't think anybody is special, I don't think anybody's particularly different or chosen or anything like that to be like a leader or an authority on any of this. But I do think that certain individuals are a lot more aligned with their intentions, and that is attractive to the phenomena. Like, for example, excuse me, even just relating it back to like my friendship with my Native American buddies and people that I work with there, the whole reason that they even talk to me and that they'll teach me things and trust me is because like in a way I've kind of earned that respect by when I go out and on camera when I'm filming at their ancient sacred sites and I go up and take pictures and post them on Instagram about their ancient petroglyphs. Like I'm very careful about the way that I present that information and that knowledge. I don't just go up to them and say, these are depictions of ancient aliens, and this canyon is a portal to another dimension. Like I'm very, very sensitive to their heritage and the culture, and that
Right.
I'm very aware that I'm a white dude up there doing this, you know. And so the, you know what I mean? So the way that I talk about it, they've flat out told me like they're like, you're one of the only white dudes that we are like proud of that you're out there doing this. And it's like trying to awaken people to the truth of this mystery and reality. And you're special to like, not that I'm special, but my ability to communicate it to people in a way that's respectful to them, but also very like educational to people who have no idea. Like there's a lot of people that just think ancient petroglyphs are just like teenagers that were doing graffiti 1,000 years ago, and it couldn't be farther
Yeah.
from the truth, you know. So
Yeah.
I try to handle all of that very delicately, and because of my way of handling it, they they give me more information, or they tell me another site that I should go visit, or they'll even show me maps of things and share this wisdom. And I honestly think that the phenomena is very similar. Like it will test you in these small ways, and like, are you noticing the synchronicities? Are you paying attention even just to your dreams? Are you even just doing metacognition where you're paying attention to your own thoughts and feelings in your own head right now? And like once you start to go deeper and deeper into that and you build a relationship with trust, then pretty soon, you know, you find yourself out doing the CE5 or doing the psionic contact where you're out there actively experimenting and exploring your own consciousness and doing meditation and looking up at the sky and expecting them to show up, and then they reciprocate, and it's like they give you a little more and a little more, and they show, and all of a sudden they'll show up right at 3:20 when Mike said they were going to show up. So you get more and more confident as you go along, and that veil just kind of parts for you more and more. And so I think where this is heading is just more of a movement of that. I think where you have more people that are going to be opening up their mind and going out and exploring it. And that in and of itself is going to be like a a snowball rolling down a mountain that just builds up momentum to where my personal goal in all of this and with the friends that I have and what we talk about is, won't it be awesome when the day comes where we're trusted enough to where the phenomena is not so shy and that they trust what we're doing to where like our batteries stop all draining, our cameras don't glitch out on us anymore or shut down or whatever, but they actually let us film a landing. Like what we
Mm.
would really love to see happen is build that relationship up enough to where they trust us to actually come close, land a craft like right on the ground, and potentially get out and meet us and not just have it be just a out of body psychic experience that's like a whole trip where you're going out of body and just seeing these things like a vision in your mind, but we want to actually catch it on camera and catch it on the 17 sensors that Dr. Segala gives us, and like um maybe have other witnesses there that are important people, like a Holloman Air Force Base type incident where a craft comes down and lands and they get out and meet you face to face.
Right.
But like being allowed and trusted to, with an experience like that, to be able to handle it maturely and with the right intentions that's beneficial to them and for us and for humanity, I think is just like a growing process that we're edging and inching closer and closer to that day coming. I don't think that full-blown disclosure is going to come necessarily from the government. We're going to get a lot of files and videos and evidence and stuff, but when it comes to actual direct contact, I think it's more likely to be someone like us, like,
Mm.
or guys like you that are sincere and have the right intentions, don't care if you make any money, it doesn't matter to you if you get famous off of it.
Right.
You're really there because like humanity needs this. Like you said, the whole thing with the Epstein files and the corruption in the world, it's like we see that darkness getting dragged out into the light,
Yeah.
and we're having to face it and deal with it and still know who we are as a person, and still want to live on this planet and still want to help people and overcome this darkness. And I think we're just getting closer and closer to that day where um, we can overcome our differences. But right now, our different countries and civilizations are still fighting over oil and starting wars over the dumbest crap you can imagine,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if people still have prejudice about other people's skin color or the dialect or the way they talk or what country they come from, they're going to have a huge problem when NHI show up. They're
Yeah.
going to have total prejudice baked in if they bump into an ant person or a shadow figure at night. They would be scared of their own shadow, you know what I mean? So it's like, until you're someone that can get over racial differences and prejudices and you actually are a good person with the right intentions, I think it's just a matter of time before we get to that point.
Whitley Strieber has talked about this a lot, but with his own encounters and how mixed they have been for him, including traumatic and going through all of his experiences with the visitors, but of how much of a intimate interaction it is we're having with them. And there's this kind of slow walk on both aisles towards each other in that process. And this is kind of why it's so personal and so incremental at the same time. Yeah. Can you tell us, like, for the listeners, what that process looks like for you, and just maybe expand on that a little bit more, because there is really that, as Whitley Strieber used, right, his late wife said, it's communion. It's about communion, and
Mhm.
that there's this internal process that is so integral to us as we evolve our understanding of not just the world but them, and then what are not just things that we can give for them or vice versa, but like what can they learn from us, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. When the phenomena and the synchronicities show up in your life, if you're in the right phase of life and you're prepared for it and you're open-minded to it, then what happens is it evokes that natural path for you to go into that initiation, into that communion, directly without being afraid. It's like the first time you see a UFO, you don't have to even know what it is or know what you're looking at. It might just completely mystify you. But in that form and that level of contact, it evokes the curiosity to want to know more, and it opens your mind even just to think about it and ponder it. And again, like ultimately the substrate of reality is consciousness. Like everything that you see in your room and when you go outside, our default reality all has to appear within consciousness. We only perceive this thin sliver of the visual spectrum of reality, and it's almost like we've got training wheels on, just our understanding of what reality is. Most people think that their consciousness is something that's happening in the neurons in their brain. Like there's the different hemispheres of the brain that are sending electrical signals, and that the whole phenomena of just consciousness is this thing that's happening inside your skull. And when you see a UFO or you have telepathic communication with an NHI or you have an out of body experience, it rips that understanding right out from under you. And it can be traumatic at first and it can be shocking. But when you get curious about it and open-minded and you overcome your fears with all of that, you develop almost more like a Buddhist perspective of non-duality almost, where you're like, everything that I'm seeing and hearing is happening within me as the witness. Like the UFO is appearing in the sky, but it's also manifesting in my consciousness as the one to see it. And there's a relationship that's formed here. And that sort of understanding kind of shifts your own reality and makes it a lot more personal. And the whole experience becomes more personal, to where, like, for example, like even if you were a religious person, like if an angel or God appeared right in your living room, like if God just appeared to you and stood in the living room, even God themselves, if they appeared like a person, would have to appear with your conscious understanding there as the witness to comprehend it, to see it, to think about it, to decide that it mattered and to care about it. And ultimately, like if you're not there and you're not looking and you don't care and you're not paying attention, it's not going to appear for you in your reality. And so ultimately, the whole fabric of reality is that we are the ones that are looking and comprehending and perceiving. And underneath all of this, it has to do with our consciousness opening up. And so the phenomena has a way of just reaching down like on to the dial of the radio, where you're just stuck on one station. Like you've been listening to the same song over and over, like one radio station, when there's a million different radio stations and Wi-Fi and all these movies being broadcast through the air. And the phenomena has a way, when you're open-minded, of just reaching down and turning the dial and helping you realize, wow, there's this whole spectrum of reality, like this, like John Keel used to call the super spectrum, so there's this whole dimension of reality above us and below us and right alongside of us that we exist with. And throughout most of history, people who are religious, they attribute that to the spirit world, and it leaves plenty of room for a spirit world. Like when you start to have these experiences, that your fear of like death and dying and moving on to the next phase of existence, a lot of that fear goes away. It's almost something that, not that you have a death wish, but suddenly you're like excited about the next adventure, because you realize how limited you are, where you're just kind of stuck and trapped in this perspective that you are your physical body. But when you have out of body experiences and sleep paralysis, and you begin to explore that, and lucid dreaming and remote viewing, what you're really exploring is your own potential, the own power and potential that your consciousness has to expand and to do these supernatural things, that you can actually astral project and go see other places, visit other realms, other times, other dimensions, and come back with like a deeper wisdom and understanding about who you are. And the realization is that we're not just people in a human body that are here having a physical earthly experience, that we're on a multi-dimensional adventure, and reality is way cooler and way more fascinating than people take it for. And when you embrace that adventure and you become an explorer of your own consciousness and reality, and you're willing to step to the edge of it and to look over that edge and to see what's there, then the phenomena can evoke that out of you just a little step at a time as you're ready. And sometimes it will push you right off in the deep end and see how you handle it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But like, to me, it's really exciting. I'm kind of obsessed with it. Like, I love going out to ancient sacred sites. I love going up to places that are supposed to be super haunted or UFO hotspots, and just putting myself out there and having the right intentions and looking at reality and realizing, like, this is all kind of like a dream. Like, we're all sharing this amazing dreamscape that has this illusion of linear time, but we're all in the multiverse. And this is like a choose your own adventure game. This is freaking
Mhm.
cool. Like, when you have the right attitude, this whole phenomena and your reality and your life starts to like take a turn and becomes a lot more interesting and fascinating. I think just more people open their mind to that and are less locked into their day-to-day life, then that moment of direct contact and disclosure is going to come.
Right.
Agreed.
Christian?
Oh no, I was just saying I agree with you, like 100%, 200% actually. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And, yeah,
Carl. And then, yeah, thank you so much again, Carl, for coming on our show. It's been great having you with us. I'm so glad that you responded
Yeah, of
and really
course, man.
appreciate all of your work and all your hard work with the different teams. And yeah, so thank you again. Carl, if people are wanting to find your channel, please give it where they can find you.
Yeah, I just go by Carl Crusher on everywhere, on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and then I have a inner circle club on Patreon where I post more exclusive stuff like actual workshops and meditations, and more personal, like video journal logs that I do and share with the Patreon supporters and stuff. And then if people are interested, like in like those workshops or learning how to do my version of CE5, I published a book on Amazon called Psionic Contact, and it just
Okay.
basically goes through all the different levels of self-awareness all the way up to metacognition, and then exploring the astral plane and psionic awareness, and then I call it psionic landscaping, where you begin to shape your own visualizations into a usable interface where you create doorways and waiting rooms that the phenomena and your consciousness can meet in, and different things like that. So there's just a lot of really cool ideas, and there's a whole chapter in there about the appropriate way to go and visit ancient sacred sites, and why the contact with the phenomena can be more direct in those places, and even some of the science behind that. And so, yeah, if people are interested, they can get my copy of Psionic Contact. It's available on Amazon. But yeah, just anywhere on social media is cool too.
Great. Awesome. And then everyone watching, be sure to go to Carl Crusher and check out all of his stuff. And yeah. But Christian, did you have any other questions today?
no other questions at the moment. That's a lie, but just due to time and everything. But just thanks for being here, and for anyone watching this far, thank you for watching. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this.